So I'm sitting in middle school class, right? And I'm sitting on my desk and I'm tapping the desk. And I'm looking at the back of this guy's head. The teacher's there, she's teaching, then she steps out. And in my mind, I'm thinking on this. I'm thinking, man, I'm about to grab this desk, just wham, hit this guy over the head. That was in my mind. Of course, I wasn't going to do that, right? But it's all, I'm telling you, the plan was there. I was going to do this. So I'm tapping. But the lady never leaves the room. She stays there the whole time. I calm down a little bit. See, because before that, this guy had just punched me. And so there I am, article glands are like shooting cortisone through my body. And I cannot calm down. You know, the bell rang, I'm in class. And this guy was going to get it that day. I'm so glad she didn't walk out the door that day. I'm so glad the teacher was in the room. My name is Fabian Ramirez. I'm a bullying prevention speaker. I train students, middle schools, high schools, even juvenile delinquents. Amen. I've probably been to some of those hard kids, all schools across the country. Amazing, amazing opportunities that I've had, and I'm just deeply honored, really, to be here in front of you today. I think some of the things that I'm going to share with you, I'm going to do a little bit in story format, and then we're going to go back and dig a little deeper. My whole presentation that I've given hundreds of times, I've broken it down. I've even had counselors come and break it down for me and say, I want everything that I do and say to have a purpose. And so I'm going to do a little bit about that today. First of all, I'm going to say I'm a mama's boy. I'm through and through. I'm Hispanic, by the way. Some of you are like, I don't know because his hair goes to the front. No, I am Hispanic, all right? And so basically, from the time I was born, I came out of the womb. My name is Fabian. My mom, my whole life, she called me mijo, right? That's what it is, right? So as soon as I came out of the womb, I was a mama's boy. My mom was like, ay, my mijo, I'm never gonna let him go, right? She would carry me around like a football, right? She's like juking the nurse at the hospital. My mom is crazy too, man. I tell people too, my mom is crazy. I'll tell her, Mom, you're crazy. She goes, you know what? Crazy is the new normal. That's what she said, right? I'm like, no, not crazy. It's great. That's the new normal, right? But my mom's great. I have old school parents too, man. Old school Mexican parents. They're from Matamoros, Mexico, by the border. And so a lot of family in the Harlingen and Brownsville, Ravenville area. And so, but yeah, I told my mom, they're crazy. How many of you guys have old school parents? You know what I'm talking about when I say old school? Yeah. Old school, you don't get in trouble at school, right? When you have old school parents, you get in trouble, that's it for you. Right? You better not even come home, right? My mom, all my mom had to say, this was her discipline. You better wait till your dad gets home. Like, that's all. I'll start crying already, right? Because this word's in Spanish. My mom would say, mijo, vas a ver cuando llegue tu papá, right? And she would get all excited too. I was like, Mom, how come you're excited? Because I'm going to get it, right? She had a little dance, mijo, vas a ver cuando llegue tu papá. I'm like, did you do the dance to that? What's up with that, you know? But old school, man. I had an old school mom. And so one time I was talking in third grade, right? Third grade, I'm talking in class. Ooh, talking in class, big deal, right? Okay, for my mom, because the teacher called home, right? Fabian, I'm going to call your mom. You're talking without permission. What's your number? I'm like, I don't know. I forgot it, right? She's like, okay, I'm going to call your dad then. Okay, no. All right. Which one? 832? You want his house phone? Don't call my dad at work. It's over. He'll just take off, and that's it for me, right? And so I got in trouble. I called home, and my mom didn't even understand English. You know, the teacher's like, yeah, Miss Ramirez Fabian was talking in class without permission. And my mom was like, without permission, I went my way, right? Like my mom would just take off running to school. I didn't live that far from the school. She'd just show up. Like a normal parent will show up at the school administration office, right? Give the license, give me that little visitor sticker, let you know I'm on campus. That's a normal parent. Not my mom, she's crazy. My mom would just start running through the hallway. She'd be jumping in the window looking for me. Like, she would just walk into class and just drag me out. I'm like, Mom, don't you gotta check me out? Get over here. I don't think you're my son, man. That's how crazy my mom is. And let me tell you, man, a lot of times, those of you how you gotta deal with parents lie? You know what I'm talking about, right? You're like, no, man, you gotta check him out. Like, he's my son. I'm gonna check him out. I'm gonna knock him out. That's what I'm gonna do. Right? That was my mom's way of checking me out. But I gotta say, that upbringing was crucial in my life. It was crucial. My mom was very strict with me. My dad was very strict with me. And you know what? Strict equals love. Because I'll tell you what, I used to go to my friend Aaron's house, man. My friend Aaron, man, I tell you what, this guy, his mom let him do whatever. right? And we all have friends like that, right? When growing up, their parents let them do whatever. Well, guess what? All of us are always there, right? I'll just walk in their house. I'll go make a sandwich, or there I am walking around the house eating a sandwich, you know. Aaron's mom didn't care. Well, guess what? Aaron's mom didn't show him the same amount of love that my mom showed him. In fact, Aaron had a lot of issues. You know, I eventually had to disconnect and detach myself from Aaron, because Aaron, man, started doing drugs, getting into gangs, doing all these things. And because even his brothers are all running loose, right? Strength equals love. One time I told my mom, when I went to middle school, and I went to DD Middle School, and I said, Mom, I don't want to wear the same thing I wore in elementary school. I went to Davila. I never say the names, but you're from Houston, maybe you know South Main, Davila. So I told my mom, I don't want to wear the same thing I wore. I want something nice. You know, I'm going to middle school now. It's a big deal. I thought, huge deal for me, right? My perspective, my reality, right? I'm like, Mom, I want some clothes. She goes, okay, mijo, we'll go buy you a pair of pants. I'm thinking one pair, great, you know? I'll take them. And I'm thinking the mall. I'm thinking something nice, department store. We had Foley's back then, right? I'm thinking Foley's, right? I want some Jabos. I want some nice, you know, pants that were nice back then. Man, my mom took me to the flea market, right? Like, tax-free weekend. I'm like, what? They don't even charge you tax at the flea market. There we are. My mom, she's like his headhunter too. She's like looking for all these clothes, right? And my mom, she finally finds this one pair of pants, right? She goes, look, mijo, look what I found on sale, on sale. I'm like, Mom, put those down. And they were purple with the white stripe right here on the knees. I remember I looked at them, I wanted to start crying. I was like, Mom, I don't wear those. I go, what's that white stripe anyway? She goes, look, mijo, they have a ruler, multifunctional, right? Like, Mom, like I'm gonna be measuring stuff in class with my pants, right? Like, here, let me measure that for you. I got this, right? Like, 3 inches, I told you, right? I go, Mom, I'm gonna wear those. She goes, hey, what time on? I'm like, fine. And I'm looking around. Yeah, Mom, where are the fitting rooms? She goes, mijo, this is the flea market. There's no fitting rooms here, right? I'm like, man, I can't tell you how many times I had to change in front of people. Right in front of Walmart, you know, my mom didn't care. She goes, look, don't be embarrassed. I'll cover you with my purse. How's that, right? Mom, your purse is see-through. It's not going to work. And it's true, man. I'm there. I'm crying already. I'm halfway crying. My mom's like, keep crying. I'll give you something to cry about, right? So I put my pants on, and my mom, I'm like, they're buying. Let's get out of here, right? I don't even longer want to be here. I'm embarrassed. All my friends are passing by. They're taking pictures. I put this on Facebook. But I'm like, man, let's go. And then my mom goes, well, mijo, I need to do the check. You know what the check is? Oh, the check is when they turn you around. And they put their hands down your pants. I let me see if you have room to grow, right? Like, man, embarrassing. I'm like, Mom, that tickles, first of all, right? And of course, you're like, mijo, you need to go take a bath right now. I'm like, man, I hate you, right? I'm going to move out, watch, I'm going to move out. I moved out one time in my house. I came back 2 hours later because I got hungry. But that was the only time I ever moved out of my house. But I got to say, I wore those. I remember they were back to school pants. You know, a lot of kids always tell me, man, is that true? I'm like, yeah, that was true. They had a ruler. They had a compass in the back. I'm like, Mom, I had to tuck in my shirt. That was the first year we had to tuck in our shirts at DD, right? Can you imagine walking around DD with a compass on the back, right? Being in geography class. Hey, where's north? I don't know. Here, let's see. Right? Like, hey, get that thing away from me, right? And so I wore them the first day of middle school. I'll never forget too. Whenever I walk into schools, and I do that a lot, whenever I walk into schools, man, even the smell of the school still trigger things in my mind. It triggers those mornings when I used to wake up and I didn't want to go to school anymore. It triggers these thoughts that I'm thinking about, man, if I see that one person, man, that also triggers something else. In fact, I've even had mental triggers when I see somebody who used to look like the person who used to pick on me. It triggers something in my mind. Somebody who had the same name as that person, it triggers something in my mind. You know, mental triggers are crazy. They'll drive you nuts. And you know what? It starts whenever something happens to you, and it goes on and on and on, especially if you don't deal with it, it's going to creep back up. And it has. It has in my life. Showed up first day of middle school. I thought I was all cool. I thought I was a big man on campus. And I was. I was short and fat. I was the fattest one on campus, right? Growing up, they used to call me Biscuit, all right? I'll just throw that out there in case I say it later, right? And then I had a funny run, too, so my brothers would always make fun of me. They're like, run, Biscuit, run. I just go running. Hey, wait for me, right? And so they would always do that. So I was Biscuit in my family. Everybody knows me as Biscuit to this day. Everybody says, hey, run, Biscuit. What's up? Biscuit's in the house. But it all started during that time. So Biscuit was there chilling. In the homeroom class, you walk in, they give you your schedule. And I'm looking at my schedule. Of course, I'm looking at what lunch I had because I was already hungry. And so, Biscuit was there, his stomach's growling. Then out of nowhere, man, the doors fly open. Boom! Man, and this guy walks in. Man, this guy's all big. I'm not going to say his name because I want to protect his identity at all costs. I know the camera's on. So anyways, Jose Gutierrez III walks in, right? And, he's walking around in homeroom class, you know. He's all like, hey, you know, takes it all back. I'm like, who is this guy? This guy's obviously a lot older than me, right? You can tell by the way he had a full beard in the 6th grade. And I had like one hair right here. I didn't want to shave it. I thought I was cool. Right? He sat down next to me. I was like, man, whose dad is that? Right? Like, I thought it was Father Sunday. I don't know how to get the memo, right? I should tell my dad, right? So there he was, and I remember we were having a conversation, Jose and I. And you know, sometimes when you first meet somebody, you know whether or not you guys are going to be friends or not, whether you connect or whether you're going to go far in the conversation. Well, I knew right away. I already knew there was things he was saying, man. I'm almost start blushing at the things this guy was talking about. And he was like, hey, see that girl die? You know, you start thinking, and then all of a sudden, like he got aggressive, even in this conversation. And he, you know, I'm always reading people's body language, and so, and he even got close to me, and so he looked at me. He was, hey, say it off. Hey, you got $5? I was like, yeah, man. I'm thinking, man, what's up? What's going on? He goes, thought you want to buy a nickel sack? Like, a nickel sack? How come I want a bag full of nickels? I don't want a bag full of nickels, right? I was like, I don't want that. I don't need change. I'm good. He was like, no, you want to buy a nickel sack? Obviously, it's a term for drugs, right? So he's asking me. I'm thinking, this is the first day of middle school. Who does that? Who shows up and like, you know, hey, you don't buy a nickel sack? Like, that's not normal. That's not normal terminology, right? Unless you use drugs or sell drugs, right? And so I'm like, I finally figured it out. You know, takes it out of his pocket. You know, like $5 worth of marijuana. You want to buy some? Like, no, man. He goes, you don't want to buy any? I said, no. And he goes, dog, well, give me the $5. I said, no, man. I remember he pushed me a little bit. I was like, dude, try to get away. He goes, come here, man. And I turned around, and he goes, and he hits me, man. First of all, who gets hit on the first day of school, right? Like, I think I was in school for 10 minutes. I think I broke a record for like everybody in America, right? Like, I was there 10 minutes already. I was on the floor like that, shaking, like what just happened, right? Like, all the bell rang. All the girls in class were like, oh, I feel sorry for him. You know, you can just leave him here. Let's drag him to the clinic. Get that side. He's heavy, right? Like man, I'll never forget that day. I flew, man. He hit me, and I flew like 20 inches. According to the ruler in my pants, because I went back and I measured it, right? Like, you see how far away? Like, I tried to tuck and roll, but I was so heavy, I just rolled. I just kind of kept going, right? I got up, awkward as it was, you know, the teacher was out in the hallway trying to do other things, only students in the room, which is one of the times that things like this usually happen, right? Unsupervised kids. So I got out into the hallway, I ran to the bathroom. You know, I put some water on my face, try to regain composure as much as possible. And I learned something that day, you know, because I'm a mama's boy. Like, I didn't grow up fighting. Like, I didn't know how to respond to this guy, right? I didn't know what to do. No one trained me to, okay, when this happens, you know, you need to do this. Now, don't get me wrong. I have a black belt holding up my pants. That's about it. I have no mixed martial arts training whatsoever. In fact, I've only been in one fight my whole life. I have to admit that. And I lost that fight, too. But in my defense, it wasn't even a fair fight. Because she was way bigger than me. I mean, she was like 7 foot at the time, and that's why I hate first grade. I do. But listen, like that day, I'll never forget that day. I learned. Jose taught me a lesson, right? You can learn a lesson from anything that happens to you, whether it's good or bad, right? Any circumstance that comes your way, man, you can learn, right? I tell students, man, you should always have 1 or 2 takeaways. Every time you go to the classroom, anytime you come to something like this, man, always have 1 or 2 takeaways, because you never know when someone's going to call you out. But more than that, that's learning. That's what learning's all about, right? Here's a takeaway that I learned from Jose that day. And to this day, I still use it. And a lot of counselors still use that, counselor training and backgrounds. You understand where I'm coming from when I say this. You know, Jose taught me that sometimes people who have been hurt, it's highly likely they might hurt other people. In other words, hurt people hurt people. Man, that day, I realized that. You know, of course, now that I go back and I've kind of, you know, started to not relive, but rethink about some of those things that happened to me. I'm like, wow, that is so true. Because Jose was a gang member. He was selling marijuana on campus, man. I mean, those two alone, you just imagine what this guy has already been through. To him to get to the point where he'll walk to the first day of middle school and like physically assault me, which is a crime. You can't just go around putting your hands on people. He felt so comfortable with that. Maybe that's the way him and his dad resolve conflict at home. I don't know, but I do know that the way they resolve conflict at home, more than likely, that's the way those kids, when they come to school, that's the way they're going to resolve conflict at school. Not only with their friends, but also with their teachers. You know what's crazy? Kids aren't afraid of the teachers anymore. Crazy. I was afraid of my teacher. Man, I didn't want her to even say, Fabian. Oh man, okay, what I do? It wasn't me, right? Nowadays, like, what? Right? What do you want? You're missing my conversation with my homeboy, right? Like, man, this guy must have been going through some stuff. He's got some hurt in his life. Here's what I learned. And some of you guys probably, there's notes that I put some key notes there for you. Hopefully you have those in front of you. You know, sometimes when kids don't, if the kids don't have an opportunity to talk out on their hurt, a lot of times they take action on their hurt. One of the things that I do is if I go inside of a school and I know that there's a situation between people or kids, and usually I do, a principal will say, there are 2 or 3 kids that usually, for whatever reason, they're always in my office. Whether they're picking on other people or they're always fighting, or I'm like, I'll talk to them, I'll talk to them about fights too. Fights never start off as fights, by the way, right? It always starts off with some kind of altercation that escalates into a fight. So I'll talk to those kids. A couple weeks ago I was in Rio Grande City, and I was speaking to these kids who were in a jumpsuit. And we're talking, these guys have been through some stuff, right? Shackles on their feet. They had the bracelets on their hands, right? Handcuffs. And they came in, they told me to get in a room while these kids come in. I'm like, man, this is 14, 15-year-olds. And I sat down with a couple of them. And I talked to them, and I'm like, why are you here? Why are you here? And you know what they said? First they said, oh, because I got caught with drugs. I was like, nah, that's surface stuff. I know why you're here. That's on paper. But why are you really here? What's going to keep you here? If you leave, what's going to bring you back here? They're like, my parents got divorced when I was 8. Couldn't even tell me that. That was a huge step for him. Almost wanted to just bust out in tears. I'm like, so tell me a little bit about that hurt. It was, man, every day I think about it. I don't know why my parents had to go through that. My brother lives with my mom. I live with my dad. But I miss my mom. But I don't want to leave my dad behind. Having it down, like, man, who are you talking to about this hurt that you're going through? Like, nobody. In fact, you're the only person that I've told. See, what kids don't talk out, they act out. You can tweet that if you want. Let me know, that way I can retweet it. What kids don't talk out, they act out. And that is so true. How do I know? Because I wanted to be like one of those people. I wanted to be like Jose. Truth be told, I wanted to be a gang member. Why? Because I saw the respect that Jose got on campus. No one picked on Jose. Everybody wanted to be cool and have some kind of attachment to Jose because Jose didn't get picked on. I was like, you know what? I want that. I wasn't doing it. I was doing it out of fear. But when I showed up to school, I showed up in fear. I was scared to go to school. I grew up in a safe environment. My house was great. My upbringing was great. But I always tell people, look, it doesn't. Even the building, some of the buildings were nice. The teacher was nice. But you know what? The building doesn't keep people safe. You know what keeps people safe? People keep people safe. You can have the best building in the world, the best school, the best district. But let me tell you something, the people are hurting. And guess what? When they don't talk out, they act out. That's why, man, but he was a good kid. I mean, how many times are we going to say that? We all have good kids. Raise your hand if you have good kids. We all have good kids. I can't tell you. They bring me in to talk about suicide prevention or bully prevention, and the first thing they tell me is, man, we have good kids. They have good kids. I'm like, absolutely you do. And we all have good kids. What happens is, there's some kids that we just don't, we mismanage some of those kids. We don't help them and create that safe environment in which they can vent out their negative emotions, right? You know, 2002 came out, the Secret Service came out with a study. You know what the study said? They did a study on school shooters. You know what they found? 71% of those school shooters were bullied. They were picked on. They were loners. 71% of them. 86% had a plan. It wasn't a red folder on the shelf, right? The plan was up here. Bullying is psychological. It really is. When a kid gets picked on, it messes with their mind all day long. That's all they can think about. Forget about who's teaching. Forget about what's going on. Forget about homework. I'm just trying to survive at this point. In their mind, remember their perspective is their reality, right? They're being picked on at school. My life is coming to an end. That's what they think. I know. I've been there. I told my dad one time, Dad, go drop me off on the other side of school. Why me home? All your classes are over here. I didn't tell him. I didn't want to be around Jose. Jose was unstable. If you ever have been around somebody who has ever hurt you, you know what I'm talking about. They're unstable to you. You know what they're capable of doing to you. So whenever I was around him, unstable environment, right? That's the term that we like to use a lot. Unstable environment. You know, it's hard for a student to focus when they're in an unstable environment. It's hard to learn, right? You can't thrive academically when you're in an unstable environment. I had Jose for math class, and I had him for science class. And I'll never forget the time he punched me because I was there in back of the class, and he was sitting right in front of me, and I was looking at the back of this guy's head. Bullying is psychological. What was I thinking? If my teacher gets out of the room, I don't know what I'm going to do. I saw an empty desk, and I'm like, what if I would never have done that. But in my mind, because I play out all these scenarios, what if I do? What would happen? What's my worst case scenario at this point? What's crazy is that there are some kids that don't even worry about the consequences anymore. They just do. Let's talk about consequences later. They just do, right? I mean, last year, a little kid up in Washington came with 41 rounds of ammunition. 10-year-old. Why does somebody like that show up at school like that? But they don't talk out, they act out. You know what he wanted to do? He wanted to defend his friend who was being picked on at school. That's what he was doing. You know, I teach people to report, I teach them to report crimes, right? If someone gets in your face or someone like really like punches you and does something against you, and I get asked a lot the question of, how do I know if it's bullying, right? That's always, how do I know it's not just like teasing or bullying? And I'm like, well, it's not for you to know. It's for the person who's getting picked on to know, right? Because a lot of us, we want to do that, right? I want to put bullying in a box here for you, right? If it's, you know, an imbalance of power between sex and role, and okay, that's bullying. What you describe as doesn't fit in this definition. But let me tell you, their perspective is their reality. The minute those kids don't feel safe anymore to come to school, that's when it's bullying. I try to make it as simple as possible, and you have to with kids. If you make it complicated, they're not going to report. And that's what we focus on a lot, right? If you make things complicated, it's just like buying, right? We're heading into Thanksgiving, and then you're already getting tweets, and then, hey, 20% off, 30% off. And let me tell you something, a confused buyer will never buy. I noticed. I walked into some restaurants, I'm like, oh man, there's like 50 options, right? Like, but then I go to In-N-Out Burger or something like that, there's only 4 options. Guess what, man? I'd rather go there. A confused buyer never buys. Let me tell you, a confused student will never take action. And we confuse our students a lot. Okay, what are you going to do? All right, if you get picked on, by the way, bullying is this. And if it's not this, then it's this. And if it's not this, then go to this person. And there's a chain. And there's like 5 different ways. And by the time you know it, man, these kids have already, psychologically, they're already gone. They're already down the road. Right? And we're still filling out paperwork, and they're gone. This is where I'm saying, man, let's set those kids aside. Let's help them to vent. You know what venting is? Being able to transfer your emotions and putting them into words. That's what venting is. See, these kids have that inside, right? But you don't talk out, you act out. Why don't we help our kids know how to vent? Right? Venting 101 session. And just say, look, let's just vent for a little bit. What's your number one thing that's bothering you right now? Right? Or let's just talk about, we're talking about like safety, and give them an anonymous like survey, right? On a scale of 1 to 10, how safe do you feel when you come to school? 1 being, I don't feel safe at all. 10 being, I feel safe at school. Try to figure it out. Gotta see where they're at. And if it's lower than a 5, then you definitely gotta take action somehow. But if it's greater than that, you know, man, there's policies in place, everybody's doing their part, right? But you gotta make sure you get whoever's in charge on board with that, right? That way it can trickle down and everybody kind of jumps behind whatever it is you're trying to do. Whenever I sit down with a kid, I want to make sure he vents. And venting could be through words, it could be drawing, right? Can you imagine having an exercise? Okay, we're going to go over something today, but you know, for the first 5 minutes, real quick, just draw a picture of how you're going. What does your life look like right now at this moment? Why don't we all draw a picture, and then let them turn it in? That's venting, right? They can draw. You know, girls are good at this. Girls can talk. I'll tell you, I've been married 7 years. Girls can talk. Okay, I know. They don't talk out, they act out. Right? I come home, my wife's like, no, stop. I can hear that. She's begging me to ask her what? What's wrong? What's wrong? 4 hours later, right? After having a conversation, right? She feels a lot better. She can move. Hey, let's have dinner. I'm tired, I'm exhausted. Just from the conversation. But you know what? She feels better. That's what happens with their kids. You know, I was saying, you know, the majority of school shooters are guys. They're all men. I mean, can you send me links about girls that are going into schools to start shooting? Send them to me. I need them. I want to present this to you. But you type in school shooters, and the majority are men, are guys. You want to know why? We bottle up our emotions. We don't even talk about things that are going good for us, much less when things are hurting us, right? I mean, that's a stretch. But if we could tell guys, man, you know what? It's okay. It's okay for you to talk to a counselor, or talk to a school counselor, or to your mom, or a leader, or somebody that you trust. It's okay to sit down with them and just say, man, just be able to vent out some of those emotions. Maybe you train them on how to do that. I mean, that's like huge. That could be huge. That could be what saves a kid. Because now they have a healthy practice, right? See, I didn't learn this in middle school. In fact, I didn't tell anybody about me being picked on. I didn't even tell my parents. But little by little, guess what? I detached myself from my parents. I didn't want them to find out. Why? Bullying, psychological. You know, I thought the worst was going to happen, right? And you usually do, right? Worst case scenario. I'm going to say something. I'm going to say Jose was assaulting me. He's selling drugs. He's going to find out. He's going to go get his gang. His gang's going to go hurt my parents. Now, you know what? I'm going to keep everybody safe by just keeping it with me. But you know what? Because of that, not only me, but 5 or 6 other guys that I know also had to endure what Jose was doing. We didn't pay up. He hit us. He looked for us. I could have easily told him, right? I need to report that. When it comes down to your safety, you got to report it at all costs. We got to teach kids how to do that. And, you know, I was scared that my brother was going to find out. My brother is crazy. My brother has been in the Harris County jail, right? I thought my brother was going to find out. And in my mind, in my 12-year-old mind, I thought my brother was going to show up to school with the program, right? Tell me who he is. Tell me who hit you, right? Was that him? No, man. That was, I'm sorry, right? That wasn't him, man. I thought my brother would go crazy. But it's all psychological, right? We tell ourselves the worst is going to happen. See, if I would have done that, I would have finally told somebody, right? A resource officer on campus. Hey, there's this guy selling drugs. In fact, he asked me to meet on Monday at 9 a.m. Maybe I'm going to go in the bathroom. Maybe he's going to follow me. If he can go in there with me, just search the guy. If he has it, he has it. It's on him, right? And I always go back to, look, these kids, a lot of the kids that are doing the bullying in our schools, you know, a lot of them are the victims. They were victims first. And so they show up to schools and they feel like the victims. Isn't that crazy? The person who's hurting other people, they're the ones that are victims. It's a different way of looking at it. And I tell kids, look, it's not about you. When someone bullies you, it's not about you, right? It's about them. I reverse it. See, this is different for kids. Kids don't usually hear that. Kids usually hear, oh, it's because they're bullies, it's because they're bigger than you, it's because, you know what, no, they're hurting them. The bullying is just like the tip of the iceberg, right? There's a lot going on underneath the water that we don't even know about. We don't know about their upbringing. We don't know what happened the minute they get dropped off. Right? Every day's different for students. It's crazy, right? Even for teachers, like I have so much respect for teachers because what they have to deal with on a daily basis, I'm like, man, I would never want to be a teacher. Although I'm a teacher, right? I'm a sub, by the way. I am a sub, right? I'm a sub because I used to make fun of the subs. But now I am one in the Austin ISD now. But I tell them, it's about them. If we can see people as hurting people, now we can help them. See, the message that a lot of these bullies, you know what they get across? They don't want me around. In fact, they're saying bully free this, and that means if I have been written up as a bully, they don't want me here. That's the message that they're giving. And we're giving it to our kids, right? And that's not very empowering. And so I'm gonna go through some of my presentation. But I wanted, by the way, what you saw, a little bit of what you saw is a little bit of what I do in schools. I do it more towards like middle schools and high schools. So I do speak in schools. That's me in Laredo, Texas, George Washington Middle School. And Jesus' son went there. We just made that connection. It was weird. I didn't plan that. So I talked a little bit about this, but I want to talk about what happened. How did I'm going through this because I already talked about it. How did I get over this? Like what are the things that helped me the most? I wanted to fail. I wanted to drop out. In fact, one day, truth be told, there was a knock at my door. Houston Police Department showed up. That Fabian, what are you doing here? Like, are you Fabian? I'm like, yeah. How come you're not in school? Like, I didn't want to go to school today. That's not your choice. It's illegal for you to stay home. You need to come with me. Took me in a squad car, took me to Milby High School, took me to my algebra class. I'll never forget the day that happened. I walked into Mrs. Bernstein's class. Can you imagine like an officer escorting me into class? That's the scenario that's going on. Everybody's looking like, you know, when an officer shows up in class, everybody gets, you know, like when the principal shows up, like, shh, shh. I'll get everybody to think about getting in trouble, right? So I show up, walk to the back of the class, get in my seat. The guy leaves, sorry for the interruption, you know, officer leaves. So there I am. Mrs. Bernstein goes, baby, why don't you come to the front? We're going over the quadratic formula, and I need to catch you up on what we just learned. You want to come to the front? I want to teach you something. Like, no, I don't want to. Yeah, come to the front, come on, we're going to help you real quick, 5 minutes. I'm like, I don't want to. And she got mad at me. Right? Well, you see me after class, young man. Of course, the class was like, what? Ooh. I was like, y'all better show up over here. I had a reputation, right? I gotta match my reputation. The bell rang, show up at the school. You want to talk to me? She's like, sit down. I'll never forget this day because this lady laid into me. She's like, Fabian, I don't know who you think you are coming to my class. You know, you're disrespectful. I'm here for you. I've been teaching for over 10 years and I've seen kids like you come and go. I know one thing for sure. You're hurting. I know you're hurting. There's something going on in your life because every time you show up, you act up. Not only do you act up, but man, you bring the whole class down. The whole attitude of the class changes the minute you step through the doors. So what's going on in your life? And you know, culturally, she made me lose face. She did the way she talked to me. I could have just said, you know what, you disrespected me. I'm gone. You know, it's going to be a long time. And then I'm an introvert at that, right? So not only am I Hispanic, culturally, you know, made me lose face. I'm an introvert. And so I'm like, man, that's it for me. This is why I don't want to be here. But I let her talk to me that way. You want to know why? But Mrs. Bernstein was always that lady in the hallway going, hey, Fabian, how you doing? She would give me a high five. Hey, Fabian, I like your clothes. I like your purple pants. Is that a ruler? I'm like, no, go. We can use that in class. I'm like, no, we can't use that. We're good. In fact, I can take them off now. But there I was, man. In other words, Mrs. Bernstein, every time she gave me a high five, you know what she was doing? Man, Mrs. Bernstein was making a deposit in my life. She was making a deposit. You know, it doesn't take much to make a deposit into a kid who's hurting. It doesn't take much. A high five, a compliment. You know, giving somebody for 2-3 seconds undivided attention, amazing. Baby, how you doing? Good to see you. Oh, it's good to see me. No one's ever told me that, right? It's good to be seen, right? I used to walk, I didn't even have her for certain classes. We had block scheduling, right? So I didn't even have her for certain classes. On certain days, I would still walk by her class. Why? So I can get my deposit. When someone is making deposits in your life, you want to be around them more, don't you? Yeah. When someone is pouring into you, you want them to pour more, especially when you're on empty. And that's what happened with Mrs. Bernstein. So when she lay into me and she let me have it, you know what she did? She took a huge withdrawal from my life, emotionally. See, I would never get in front of an audience and not make some kind of a deposit in their life. I have to. I use comedy for that. I do 10 minutes of comedy all the time. Every time I speak to students, 10 minutes of comedy. Why? It helps them relax, right? Before I go deep, man. I would never go to surgery without anesthesia, I'll tell you what. Right? If I go to surgery, man, knock me out. I'm not good with pain, right? You can ask my wife. I'm at the flu. I'm gonna die. I sneeze one time, you know. So I use comedy like anesthesia before I go deep in my message. And I found that it makes a deposit in the lives of all those students that I talk to. Because when it comes down to it, when I start talking about suicide or bullying, it's like taking a withdrawal. It's a lot. And then I'll throw some comedy in there to kind of give commercial breaks, because it's a lot. It's a lot to take in. And I know, that's why it's one of the hardest topics to speak about. In front of high school, you know, middle school kids who want to hurry up and leave, you know, thousands of kids. But I'll never forget, man, she made deposits in my life. See, when you get after a kid without making a deposit first, well, you're in debt with that person, right? You do walk away making, you make me lose face in front of all my friends. And they always remember that. I know a lot of times teachers have a lot on their plate, you know, I understand that, you know. I mean, we all kind of are on that boat these days, right? We're all doing one or two jobs, right? We're not getting paid enough that we should. How many guys aren't getting paid enough now? Don't raise your hand. But I know, we've been there. I understand. But you don't have to pay to make a deposit, right? It's free. I think kids don't want you to buy gifts for them, and they just need to know that there's an adult in their life that cares. That cares. Man, she sat down with me that day, and you know what she did? She did three things. I always like the three E's, so I call them the three E's. Number one, and she empathized with me. I told her, the wall came down. The wall has been up ever since I've been hurt. That's what we do, right? We put up a wall, we put everybody at arm's distance. I don't want to let anybody in. I lose trust in people. The wall came down a little bit, right? There was enough deposits, the wall came down. I started talking about my hurt. I started talking about the gangs. I started talking about the drugs. I told her about everything that had been going on in my life. And she didn't try to fix it that day. You know what she did? She just, baby, I'm so sorry that happened to you. Like, no student should ever have to go through what you went through in middle school. Every student should ever come to school, feel safe, and be able to thrive academically, right? That's what, man, when she said that, it affirmed what I was feeling. And let me tell you, for somebody who's hurting, to be able to just communicate a little bit, being vulnerable, and then have an adult who I trust, who's already made deposits in my life, affirm what I'm being vulnerable about, man, it felt good. I was like, man, I want to talk more. Ooh, I'm starting to bend, right? I'm starting to open. Man, I'm starting to share. I told her about other things that were going on in my life. I told her about, you know, living in two cultures and how hard that is, and growing up ESL, and sometimes I don't understand what I'm translating what she's saying the whole time while she's talking to me, you know. I thought, she's like, I understand that. That must be difficult. You know, one day it's going to work for you. I'm like, yeah, and it has, right? I'll never forget that. Number one, she empathized with me. This is what happens when kids come to us with problems, with issues, right? You know, when someone, and like I said earlier, you know, fights never start off as fights. People usually go up to us with problems that are much lower than, you call me this, call me that, name calling, boyfriend, girlfriend, stuff like, oh, what they call you? Do you believe that? No, I don't either, right? Take an opportunity to invest, right? Deposit. In fact, I believe the opposite. When you walk into the room, you light up the room. Don't listen to what they have to say, right? Change the tapes that are in your mind. And that's what happened that day. It was so freeing for me. So let me tell you, hurt people, but free people, free people. And I've been free from my hurt. In fact, that's why I can get in front of audiences and talk about my hurt and laugh about it. And laugh about it. Even though going through it, man, suicidal thoughts. Going through it, man, I don't want to be here. I hate everybody. I want to be a gang member. I want, those people get me. But now that I'm free from my hurt, I can talk about my hurt. She empathized. Number two, she encouraged. She said, look, I don't have time. Why don't you come after school and I want to teach you the quadratic formula, which you didn't want to learn in class. I'll stay as long as it takes. See, Mrs. Bernstein, she didn't see me for what I was. I was a punk. Just straight up. I was a punk. I was somebody who was hurting. You know what she saw me for? She saw me for what I could be. A lot of times we treat kids by what we see. By the way they're dressed, by the way their actions. I'm like, man, that's not what kids need. Kids need adults in their lives who can see them for what they're going to be. I believe every student is one adult being a successful one adult. What do you want? One adult who can really take that out of you, take the leadership out of you, right? Take you to another level, give you opportunities to shine. I'm not going to let you fail my class. There's no way. You can fail all the other classes, and if you do that, that's on me. But I want to tell you, if you apply yourself from this day forward, I'm going to make sure that you pass. I'm going to make sure you pass. I was like, man, at a point where I thought I was going to drop out, that was huge. I didn't want to. I've been there, I've done that. And my brother went to high school. He said it was the hardest week of his life, right? Like a week, like seriously. So I'm like, man, where I come from, we just don't graduate, right? Just don't. So when she said that it was possible, okay, I'll listen to this lady. In fact, that's why a lot of students don't graduate high school. It's that simple. They don't believe they can. The minute they believe that they can, they will. They'll do every opportunity to get there. They'll cut the fluff out. She encouraged me, came after school. You know what she taught me that day? And I was like blown away. She told me Pop was a weasel, right? I'm like, Pop was a weasel, what does that have to do with math? Like, seriously, man? She was, learn the tune, come back tomorrow. Came back the next day. We worked with a quadratic formula, and I used the tune to write out quadratic formula. To this day, I still know the quadratic formula because of what Mrs. Bernstein taught me that day. Here it is. X is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Bam, is that cool? Yeah, I still know that today because of what happened that day. Why? She empowered me. That's the third E. See, if somebody comes to you with an issue or problem, let me tell you, you empathize with them, you encourage them, but then you empower them. If you miss one of those, if you miss empowerment, get ready, because they're going to keep coming back to you with the same problem. All right? I'm talking to managers now, right, and those who manage people. If you don't empower your people, they're going to come back and say, well, same thing with kids. You don't help them and you don't empower them. Empowerment is just, you don't just give a kid the answer, you show them how to solve it for themselves. That way for the rest of their lives, they can solve that problem. She taught that. She helped me to see that. But you know what, if you don't want to use Papa's Weasel, you can use Journey. Don't stop believing. All right? I'm not a singer, some of you are like, no. Right? But it goes like this. X is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Don't stop. But okay, I'll stop there. Biscuit's about to do a half flip over here. Half flip because I always land on my back. So, but anyway, learning can be fun for kids, right? And this lady taught me, and she empowered me. You know how we always have self-talk? I went home that day, you know what I said to myself? Because before that, I told myself, I'm dumb, I don't belong, I shouldn't be here, right? I'm going to drop out at any point. From that day forward, what my self-talk was? I'm a teacher. I'm a teacher. And you know what I did? I taught people the quadratic formula. I came back the next day, I was like, you don't know it? Come here, let me show you. They're like, who are you? You're failing. Like, who are you, right? Like, no, don't worry, I got this. Right? X is equal to negative B, right? But you know what? It became a point where I was teaching people, kids, before that. I've always been a teacher. You don't have to teach good things to be a teacher, right? I was teaching kids how to do drugs, how to roll a joint if they don't have zigzags. I was teaching kids where to buy drugs. I was teaching kids how to do things. How you want to skip? I know where to go. I know where the officer's not going to be. Right? But then it came a point where I get to show somebody something that can be beneficial in their lives, and I said, I want to do this more. I told my teachers, if there's ever a time that you need me for any kind of illustration, I'm there for you. The answer is yes already. I became a yes guy, right? Not a teacher's pet, not a teacher's pet, a yes guy. There's a difference, right? Because she knew anytime that she's like, yep, I know you're the go-to guy. That's what teachers need. Teachers need go-to people in the room, right? I mean, they need people who are ready, who are empowered, and who want to empower other people, right? Because learning doesn't just stop with you, right? You might never see the fruit of your labor, but it's out there, and it's spreading like wildfire. So just remember that too. Whenever you speak to somebody or talk to somebody, and you're not just talking to them, you're talking to the future kids, and who knows how far that impact will go. I came back the next day. I came back all dressed up. I had a tie. I lost the pants, right? The back to school pants. And people were like, hey, you got an interview today? Why you all dressed up, right? Like, you know you're dressed up when people tell you things like that, right? Well, that's the way it was for me. I showed up and I was a different person, man. Because up until this point, you know what I was doing? And I was training people not to like me. That's what I was doing. My teachers, they didn't like me. But you know why they didn't like me? I trained them not to like me, that's why. Did you know that it's our job to train people how we want to be treated? Isn't that crazy? It's up to us. By the way we do, by the way we dress, by the way we treat other people, especially in this case, that's why I always kind of like park there. You know what I started to do? And Mrs. Bernstein, she told me straight up. Because I told her, you know, there's some guys that want to fight me. And like, she was like, why? And well, I used to mad dog them, you know, a little word that I would use. I was mad dogging them, looking them up and down. Now they want to fight, this and that. And she was like, here's what you need to do. You need to implement the golden rule in your life. Like, the golden rule, what's that? She was, the golden rule is when you treat other people the way you want to be treated. She was like, how do you want to be treated? I was like, honestly, I just want to be treated fair. Like, I just want to be treated with respect. Like, good, nice. That way, I can feel good when I come to school. Which is okay. Well, now you need to implement the golden rule, which is to treat others the way you want to be treated. And you just said you want to be treated with respect, kind, nice. Then you need to give that out. See, the law of reciprocity says the energy you give to me, I'm going to give back to you. Right? You get in my face, the first thing, the natural thing that a human body does is, and you get in my face, and guess what? I'm going to get in your face. Right? The energy you give to me, I'm going to give back to you. But the law of reciprocity is different. In fact, the golden rule is meant to be implemented on people who are mean to you, not people who are nice to you. That's easy, right? That's the law of reciprocity. You're nice to me, I'm going to reciprocate with something nice back. But the golden rule is meant to be used on people who are mean to you, your enemies. That's why it's one of the hardest things you have to teach a kid how to do. It's simple when you say it, it's hard when you do it, right? And the majority of kids, they know the golden rule already. Everywhere I go, what's the golden rule? I always have several. There's different definitions of it too, right? All the moral teachers who have ever lived have some variation of the golden rule, right? Do unto others as you want them to do unto you, right? That's another variation of the golden rule. See, the kids know it. Right? They know what to do. They don't do what they know, right? That's our job, to kind of train them and show them how to do that. So she sat down with me and she showed me the golden rule. And she was like, here's what you do. She pulled out a piece of paper and she put a line down the middle. And on one side, she's like, tell me all the actions that people are doing against you, like the bullying behavior. And she wrote down, I wrote down, people call me names, people look at me up and down, I thought that was bullying. And these are things that can lead to it, I guess. I wrote those down and she goes, okay, Now let's look for ways in which you can, and the key word here is huge. We're going to look for ways in which you can respond to every single one of those that you just mentioned. So I did that. So someone calls you a bad name, let's find a way that you can respond. So we worked together on that. We came up with words that I could say, and then she goes, because by the way, the golden rule is a response, right? The message to kids is, you can't change how people treat you, right? We can try. I can try to train you, right? But there's some kids that just, man, they're so hurt, man, they're just gonna treat you bad no matter what you do. They'll probably take advantage of the fact that you're being nice to them, right? But I'm like, let's give it a shot. So I'm like, because I thought that, I'm like, I'm gonna be nice to people who are mean to me? That's dumb, that's crazy, that's counteractive. Like, how does that work, right? Well, bullying is psychological, so you need to use a psychological solution. And the golden rule is a response. I can't change how you treat me. The only thing I can change is my response to how you treat me. So I'm gonna focus on that. And you know what, I'm gonna get so good at it that I'm gonna train you to respect me. There was people, I had to retrain some people. It was hard, it was difficult. But you know what, it was worth it. Retrain teachers, man, is there anything I can do for you? This one time, truth be told, I bought this guy a Dr. Pepper. It took everything in me to buy it for him. The guy didn't like me. When you see certain people, like there's friction already in the air, right? There's all this tension, and I knew at this point, at some point, I could have been in a fist fight with this guy. But one day, he was in the lunchroom, I was there as well, and there was tension, and I felt it. And something told me in my gut, it's gonna take you, right? You always hear, somebody has to be the bigger man. Like, why am I always the bigger man? That's because I am the bigger man, right? So I went and bought him I knew he liked Dr. Pepper. I bought him a Dr. Pepper, and I went up to him, and I just put it right in front of him. I was like, here, man, you can have that. And I walked off, too. I'm cool, right? But he saw me later on in the hallway, and he came up to me. Hey, man, thanks for buying me a Dr. Pepper. I appreciate it. We didn't become friends. We weren't like buddies after that. But you know what? He stopped looking at me bad. He stopped talking about me behind my back. There's going to be people that, not everybody's going to like you, right? I mean, that's just it. Not everybody like me. But we should teach kids to always live in such a way where even their enemies respect them. And you and I do that as well. We live in such a way where even our enemies respect us. Like, I don't like him, but I have to respect him because that guy lives it out. Or that lady lives it out. Okay. We walk the talk. Started going to student government. Was a part of like FCA on campus, and president of this council, and the people wanted me to be in front. They made me the front person in a lot of these categories. My senior year, they nominated me, but I was like the prom king of my high school, right? 600 seniors, prom king. Of course, my good looks had a lot to do with that, but besides that. But why? Because, man, people want to follow people who treat others good and nice. That's what it comes down to. I know something so simple, but, man, it's so freeing. I can't tell you how many people have come up to me and said, we all know this, but no one does it. I'm like, of course, it's hard to do. But, man, I would come to those doors, and I'd say hi to everybody, and I was cool with everybody on campus. I overcame my enemies. How did I do that? Man, I showed love to those people. Right? Dr. Martin Luther King quote. Right? Love is the greatest force you will ever use to overcome an enemy and actually make them a friend. It's love. My challenge to kids is, man, if you have an enemy or somebody that doesn't like you, you know what? Make it your project to make them a friend. That's your project. What we teach kids is, if someone doesn't like you, you know what? Go report. Go tell a teacher that they don't like you. And then the teacher can't do anything. She has her hand behind her back. Right? You can't take people down for being mean to each other. There's no law that says you can't be mean to each other, right? You can only do so much, right? You really can. So then you get upset parents, the school's not doing anything about it. What do you want me to do? They're just being mean to each other. I can't take them to jail for being mean. I mean, how many more of us can go to jail right now because we were mean to somebody at some point, right? And you know what, just give me the handcuffs, I'll put them on myself, right? But when we empower kids to say, man, when someone is mean to you, man, you turn it around. Number one, you say to yourself, man, they're hurting. There's something going on in their lives. You try to look for a way to show love, overcome them, and actually make them a friend. This is what happens. And this is basic training for kids. Mrs. Bernstein got in front of me, she goes, okay, let's do it. And we started to role play with every single one of those that we wrote down. She called me a name, and I called her another name, using the golden rule. She called me another name that was bad, and I said another name. And then she didn't know what to say after that. Why? It's hard to be mean to someone who's always nice to you. It's just plain and simple. Right? We overcomplicate it a little bit too much, but it's true. It can be that simple. It's hard to be mean to someone who's someone who's always nice to you. So take a proactive, I take a proactive approach. I'll treat people with respect first, and then see how they treat you. I've done it in school, college, my family, in my business. You know, a lot of times I can't even get attention from like a principal. I send her a $5 Starbucks card, right? Here's some coffee on me. I usually drink coffee at 6. Let me know when you're drinking coffee, and let's have a conversation. Hey, Fabian, I got your Starbucks card. Why? Because I showed them respect first. I did unto others as I wanted them to do unto me. I get clients. I get big-time clients who's doing that. The bigger the client, the bigger the gift, right? $100 gourmet brownies. Boom. Department of Education, Mississippi. 6-figure account like this. Repeat orders. Why? Because I treat people the way I want to be treated. Listen, I don't know how you do what you do, but I tell you, this works even for you. I don't know what you tell kids to do, but if you just teach them to report, get ready, because they're going to come back to you again and report. You become the person they report to. But if you teach them and you empower them, and they get to take control of their social issues for the rest of their lives. And that's what we want for our kids. Because you're not always going to be there. Principal's not always going to be there. The counselor's not always going to be there. So now they're at work, right? They're getting picked on. It's like, man, I wish I had that legal number. Well, how do you overcome your enemies? Well, you learned that in middle school, remember? Oh yeah, that's right, the golden rule. You apply that in your marriage? No. Husbands sometimes bully wives. Wives sometimes bully husbands. In your workforce, right? That happens a lot. And now you can overcome your enemies. Actually make them a friend. You know, eventually I graduated high school. This is like the end result that we want for all our kids. That's why we're here, right? I mean, we want our kids to finish. We don't know what they're going to do when they leave our district, right? They're going to go do great things, but man, if we can get them to get to the point where, number one, they believe that they can graduate, they will. See my dad stand up. Like, that's my mijo. My mom, she wiped a tear from her eye. Mascara running down her face. She did like Google Maps, right? Here's 59, here's 60. My brother stood up, he's like, run, biscuit! I'm like, I heard you. But you know, there's no greater honor that kids can give their parents than to have their parents see them graduate. No greater honor, right? To complete and finish and go all the way. Why? Because when they graduate, the family graduates. That's why. That's why it's huge. That's why the whole family goes to your graduation. You know, they went to my high school graduation, my college graduation, my grad school graduation. I want to show you a picture. Let's go here. I want to show you a picture of my wife real quick before I wrap up. Here's a picture of my wife. The reason I showed this picture, and I show it everywhere I go, you know, her parents had a vision for her to get her PhD, right? 3 stripes, 3 level of education on her regalia. To get her PhD. She was 5 in this picture. And I saw this picture and I said, man, is that when you graduate college? No, man, I'm going all the way. I'm going to get my PhD one day. She was already talking about that. I was like, man, that's great. That ain't what it was, right? What's a PhD? I don't even know what it means even today, right? Like, but I know what it is. I know what it can do, and I know it opens doors. That's for sure. You know, this past May, man, my wife, 31 years old, I got to see her walk across stage. You know, my wife received her PhD. Here's a picture of my wife now holding the same picture that she's been having. She was 5, that same vision. And the reason I show you this picture, right, what does that have to do with bullying? It has a lot to do with bullying. This was her yes in life. Her yes. See, I don't teach kids just to say like no to drugs. I teach them what to say yes to. Because I believe that we can teach kids to say yes to something, man, they'll leave each other alone. That's not part of the formula. Picking on people, suicidal, you know, doing drugs, getting into gangs. You know what? That's not part of the formula. We got to have that big yes in front of students to say, every day when you show up to class, man, boom, you need to have that yes. In fact, you should probably have pictures like that all across the top of their school, their classroom. And that way every day, you got in trouble? Dude, how does that apply to your yes up there, right? We need to keep that yes in front of our students. Man, every day she would wake up, put on her makeup, and go to class, even though she didn't want to. Why? Because that picture was there. This was her yes. Man, she had a yes. She had it in front of her. Didn't go to a lot of parties, missed out on some things, and you know, you sacrifice for a little amount of time. So man, you get to reap the fruit of your labor. Today she gets to do whatever she wants. And she gets to speak, write books, do the things that she's always wanted to do. She's like, oh, put that on hold. I'm in school right now, I need to focus. But once I finish, man, we would always talk about that. Once I finish, now she finally finished, and I'm like, go do what you want to do. We write curriculum together. We wrote the only curriculum for Red Ribbon Week that's video based. My wife and I. Red Ribbon Week drug prevention. We just came out with one, bully prevention videos. She wrote a lot of the research behind it. Why? Because I have a calling on my life to reach out to young people. I know you have a calling on your life to reach out to people, to educators. I don't know what jurisdiction you have or what districts you're in, but I know you have a certain amount of influence wherever it is that you go. And I don't know what kind of yes you have even in front of you, but maybe you have that. And I want you to know that everything you do, every class like this, every credit that you take is one step closer to getting to that yes. Maybe one day you won't be a superintendent or you won't be a principal board. I have no idea. But it never stops. It doesn't just stop with kids. It affects us as well. You know, we can learn a lot from kids. I do all the time. That's why I like being around kids. I love to learn about students' behavior. But I know that if you don't deal with it, right, if you don't let kids talk it out, some of those hurts, it's gonna stay with you forever. That doesn't mean that if you talk it out, it's gonna go away. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's gonna help a little bit. And for kids, all they need is just a little bit of room, wiggle room to be able to get through the day. Some of these kids come to your schools and they're safe at your school. But the minute they go home, they're not safe. And sometimes it's flipped. They're not safe at your school, but the minute they go home, they are safe. Every child is different. That's why you cannot put prevention in the box. You can't do it. You know, when I sell my curriculum, I'm like, look, this is just one of the ways in which you can help your students. It's not the way. I will never say that. Because prevention keeps changing, doesn't it? Circumstances keep changing. I mean, the Ebola, just talking about that today, like, yeah, I had to change the PowerPoint in the last 24 hours. I'm like, man, he's talking about prevention though, right? You cannot put prevention in the box, no matter what you do, no matter how much you pay for it. But if you don't do it, you're going to pay in other ways. Right? Key points that I want to leave you with. Hurt people, but free people, free people. I think when you go back to your schools and you see those kids, I don't want you to just see them just for kids who are coming in, they have to be in a seat. And if they're not in their seat, then the school's not getting a certain amount of money. And, you know, if a kid drops out, you know, it's worth $6,000 to the school that year. Or, you know, a lot of times we thinking, though, you know, on paper, that's what we see. But I want us to start seeing people for hurting kids. When you go back to your desk today, because you've been here, you're going to have paperwork on some kids, right? There's 3 in your desk, and you go reach out to them, contact a parent, or whatever the case. Don't just see those as pieces of paper. See them as people. There's 3 hurting kids who need me to make a deposit in their lives. And I'm going to look for a way to do that. And guys, it's huge for you as well, because man, for another man to look another guy in the eyes and say, you don't have to do this. This doesn't have to be your story. Which is what I told the kids in Rio Grande City. I told them, look, the reason I'm here talking to you is because you're part of the student population. You might be in a facility, you might be with shackles on your feet, but you're still part of the student population. And this is not the end of the story, it's just a part of the story.
How are you?
I hope the next time I see you, you're in a different part of the chapter in your life. And then you've broken free from that. But I tell them, it's not until you talk to an adult that you trust. What you don't talk out, you act out. And that is huge. And a lot of our kids that are acting out, majority are in fear. Those who are in fear stay home. And you know what that's acting out? I don't know to school, they have sick mom, dad, when they're not. That's acting out. Teach them to go to room. Something so simple, they already know it, right? It's not what you know, it's how you do it, right? Show them how to do it. Get that piece of paper, put it lying down the middle. Say, let's focus on how you can respond the next time this happens. And then come back and report on how that happened. You'll be surprised, some of them will be like, so freeing that they can finally have something they can implement like that. That's all. I don't want to make things hard for people. You gotta make it simple. And the last thing I want to share with you is a quote, right? And it's a quote by a guy I admire, a guy I've talked to on the radio, a guy who helped me get out of debt. His name is Dave Ramsey. I have a lunch already planned with this guy later this year, or later next year, because he's had such an impact on my life. And the quote that he says, those of you who have heard him on the radio, he says, when you live like no one else, later you get to live like no one else. This is something I teach kids. So you only have a certain amount of time to go to school, get your education, right? The more you go, the more money you will make, right? The more you learn, the more you earn, right? I said, if you're willing to do the things, I don't care what your mom, your dad has done, I don't care what your sister, maybe they've done well, but I want you to know that if you're willing to live like no one else and study like no one else, later you get to live like no one else. Why? Because you've already done the hard work. You've put it in, and now you get to reap, right, from what you sowed in school. So sow yourself. I tell kids, man, I can't wait for the day you come up to me and be like, hey, biscuit, right? Hey, what's up? Like, guess what? I'm living like no one else. Like, God, that's awesome. It's amazing. I love that. I love that you get to do what you want to do. I'm going to leave the stage with this jacket. Watch this. It's not one of those straight jackets that I have to get out of, but my wife wishes it was sometimes, but watch this. Run this, like that. Obviously, I stole it from Run DMC, but you know, the reason I put on this jacket in front of kids, especially, is that I want them to know it doesn't matter what people say about you. You got to know who you are. You got to know where you stand, right? If you don't stand for something, you fall for anything. So you got to know where you're at, where you're going in life, and shoot for it, right? If you aim at nothing, you're going to hit it every time, right? So you got to know who you are, where you're going. This is where I'm going. Here's my vision. Here's my yes. Who cares what people say about you? This is true resilience right here. When you can get in front of people and say, let's all laugh at me. Let's all laugh at the things that used to hurt me. Let's all, man, that's true. This is what for our kids. When your kid is resilient, man, someone says something about them and they're like, man, that's not true. Because I've heard the truth. Right? You're not a person who usually tells me true things. Right? Because my teacher over here who's making pauses in my life says different. See, this is one for kids, to be resilient on our campuses. When they're not resilient, then what happens is they just go, they report, but when they're resilient, they're like, doesn't faze me, I know who I am, I know where I'm going. That person is just hurting, and now he wants to hurt me. See? So I wanted to end with that. I wanted to end with this jacket, just by putting it on, because kids get a kick out of it, you know? And by the time I leave it, everybody knows me as Biscuit. I grew up Biscuit, and I like that. It shows that, number one, they're listening and they like it, but number two, it shows that it gives them that peace, like, man, you know what? It's true when he says, I can be resilient to what other people talk about. You don't have to live in your hurt, right? You can break free from that. So it's been an honor and a privilege to be able to be with you in front of you. Thank you so much for what you do in the schools that you go to. So thank you for having me today. Like 5 minutes, but if you guys have a question, I would love to be able to answer a question that maybe you, burning question may have had from my presentation. I would love to answer that. Yes, sir.
When you tell kids about the golden rule,
Yeah.
you know, how many of them think that, oh man, they want to think I'm weak,
Yeah.
because, I don't really think like that, but if I start doing this, they're going to think I'm weak.
Right. Yeah, and a lot of kids do that because it's not a weakness approach. What it is, and I show them a vision. I said, look, when you get picked on, the person who's picking on you, it's like you're driving a car. It's like they put you in the back seat. So now they're saying, I'm gonna take you for a ride, right? Mentally, psychologically. So I give them that vision. When you implement the golden rule, it's not a weakness. What you're saying is, hey, this is my ride. Close the door. You say, I am in control, right? And then you go full throttle. And so I think kids get it when you ever break it down like that. But yeah, that's a good point, because sometimes it is a weakness. Like, it comes off as a weakness, but in reality, man, you are in total control of your life. They don't control you. You control your own life, your own destiny. Good point. Anybody else have a question? That was great.
You have a curriculum, is that right?
I do have curriculum. In fact, they put out a blog. The Department of Education did a blog, and I'll give my first video absolutely free away. It talks about the psychology of bullying. It comes with leader guides. It comes with student guides, PowerPoints. I don't know if I have a letter to parents on there in case the schools use it. But yeah, it's on the blog that Carol wrote. And so I gave her the link. It's on there. You read that article, it's going to say Fabian has curriculum, and here's the first video. Click on that, and it takes you there. But if you want to write it down, it's bullyingpreventionvideos.com. I guess I'll do a selfish plug here. Kind of looks like this. This is the actual bullying prevention video. It's called Everyone Matters, with that logo there. Eventually, I just pinpointed it to a point where, and where did we treat everybody like they matter? Right? How awesome would that be? I'm gonna come out with something called the Golden Rule Week instead of Anti-Bullying Week. Right? I think it's awesome if we can have a Golden Rule Week where we actually are proactive instead of, I won't say it's reactive, but not just raise awareness, but be proactive. And for a whole week, we're going to focus on how we can treat other people the way we want to be treated. Do something nice, that whole chain reaction, just a different way to do that. And I'm using bullying as a vehicle to do that. I think it's awesome. So, yeah, bullyingpreventionvideos.com. And then the Red Ribbon Week one is redribbonweekvideos.com. Kind of along the same line. All my information is out there. If you'd like to get more postcards, I have business cards. I have about 10 of these. This is like my demo video. If you're going to go back and maybe want to show my demo video to somebody and present it to them, feel free to take one of these. I have 10 of them available, so I don't have enough for everybody. But if you think you're going to go back and actually show it to like a group, I know sometimes you're like, I want to show this to our PTA or PTO or whatever. Feel free to take one of these. Okay, I'll have about 10 of them available. In fact, I'll have them over here. Okay, so again, it's an honor and a privilege to be with you today. Thank you for having me.